This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Good morning. Call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, June 21st, 2022. Please call the roll.
Vice Chair Carey,
Present.
Member Hennigan,
Present.
Member Hutchins,
Here.
Member Krasinski,
Here.
Chair Marsh.
Here.
And just two quick announcements. I don't know if everybody heard, but we are upgrading our audio and video. So therefore, right now, currently our screens are not working, and that's why you cannot see the agenda up. Also, we have our alternate member, Robert Rodriguez, who's gonna be here for the first time, and just wanted to introduce him to the other members.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you.
Morning and welcome. Good to have you. Can we please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd invite any public comments. Hearing none. Are there any comments from staff? A lot of shaking heads. That's good. Okay. Can we make a motion to approve the minutes of May 16? You cannot quite follow them. They're pretty.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to the main agenda, I remind the commission that this is a quasi judicial review. And if anybody has any ex parte, could they disclose that, please?
None.
None.
None. And moving on to item 2, the amendment to 28 Hudson Avenue, and their application for a koi pond.
You want me to start swearing in everybody that's going to be speaking on this?
Please.
item? Okay, will anyone wishing to speak on this item, please stand and raise your right hand. Okay, do you swear affirm the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, when you come forward, please speak up and state your name and address for the record. Raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay. Staff, do you want to give us a little report before we have the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, board members, Corey O'Gorman, town planner. This is an amendment to a prior approved development plan review for the home at 28 Hudson. It's for the addition of a koi pond in a courtyard area on the north side of the home. The memos from staff are attached to the report. There are no exceptions taken and some comments from our town engineer. We're happy to answer any questions that we can.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Yes.
No.
The microphone's not working.
Just state your name. State your name.
Just the TV.
No, it's the audio and video.
Good morning. David Opstein on behalf of CJM Communities and Dr. Clapper, the applicant. We concur with the findings of the staff report. I think they did a good job. As you can see from the plans, the pond is wholly within the existing approved footprint of the property. It won't be visible from adjoining properties. It'll be screened by mangroves to the north and landscaping that we will be installing on the north side of the house. It's just for a visual element as you come in the front of the house. In earlier versions of the house, years ago, there was a pond that had been proposed, but in the latest version, there was no in the latest approved version, there was no pond. So we're coming back to put a pond in. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I had a question. How deep is it?
Yeah, that's right.
I think it goes from 12 inches to 2 feet.
Okay, thank you.
There'll be no swimming or anything like that.
Yeah, that was my question as well. Just
Couldn't.
no false bottom, right?
No.
Okay. Any comments from the commission?
None.
None.
None. You're gonna have some really happy pelicans.
Seagulls.
We were just discussing. The pond out front is fantastic and has huge fish in it. I think it's with the design that they protect them. We'll see how it goes. It may be just the most beautiful pond.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
okay, can we have a motion?
Go ahead.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, what's your comment?
Yeah, just a general comment. We don't anywhere cover water features, is that correct in our ordinances? Or, I mean, even descriptively, whether, am I correct? I couldn't.
Chairman, I found nothing in the code.
No,
And then this, it brought up a second question that from something that Corey had written down. What if somebody asked for 2 swimming pools? Are these considerations or is it just that going too far?
I have
Well,
no-
I wondered why it came back. Why did we have to approve this particular change?
If I recall correctly, there's nothing in the code that regulates the development plan review that allows for any changes without it coming back to.
Okay, understood.
So, but that's a good point. I don't know if we should. put a-
Only,
Tag on that.
only a question, not taking. the-
Yeah, I can say I've never seen 2 swimming pools on the property. And maybe it's due to the, the hardscape versus impervious, pervious.
I mean, we have lots that would sustain that. I mean, this could have been a what you call it, a
Plunge pool.
walk-in
Waiting
Plunge
pool.
pool.
plunge pool or immersion pool, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we could ask staff to just review any other municipalities, see if there's any language. It's curious that
So it could, yeah.
because if an oceanfront property could have one in the ocean, one in the
In the back,
back.
yeah, I mean, 20,000 square foot lot, it would work. But
A long
Is there a
time ago,
reason-
they used to do that.
Right.
Is there a
Fix that.
reason why you would want to prohibit that?
No, as long as it, I mean,
Not permitted.
if the property is big enough and it doesn't impede or involve reducing pervious area, then it may create neighborhood problems
So a pool
or
would
neighbor
be,
problems, I should say.
a pool or water feature would be considered pervious, right? 'Cause
Impervious.
It'd be impervious.
yeah, even though it holds water, it doesn't
Okay.
percolate.
So that would have some control
Yes.
over making the whole front lawn a water feature.
Okay, well, let's just keep an eye on that, I guess. Okay, thank you. Good job and good luck. Oh, yes. I hope so. Christie, you stay awake. I'm asleep. all right?
Happened so fast you didn't notice.
Don't do that to me. Okay. Okay, moving on to item number 3. Regarding floor area ratio calculations. And I think we all got quite a hefty package. And I don't know if I should open this to Christie first or to Corey.
You didn't question whether or not there was a vote on the last time, so that means it's probably a good idea.
All right, Corey, I think you did, or I assume you did a great job because we had requested that you reach out to other communities to see what they have done. And I think it's like a Chinese menu here.
Chairman,
And
it
I-
really is, there's not a whole lot of consistency, I don't think. It
Well-
really seems to address the local conditions.
Yeah, I
of our
think it,
communities, deal with FAR primarily for commercial, and don't deal with it with residential.
right,
Although in communities such as Ocean Ridge, I think where there are issues of redevelopment in neighborhoods that have impacts of mass and scale of new construction, that's where, at least that's my interpretation of what we're seeing in some other communities, like
Yeah.
on the shores.
before I ask you just to give, yeah, the observation from my standpoint, because I deal with this obviously, is, yeah, there's so much variation here, good and bad. There's a lot of poor, let me be kind and say poor criteria here in some of these adjacent communities. Manalapan is one, for example, and it shows. There's no FAR, so it's basically build as you want, just meet the setbacks. That's the simple definition of their zoning code. On the other hand, you have Palm Beach, which is very complicated. They don't have a FAR, they have a cubic content ratio, CCR. And I deal with that a lot. And the intent there is to maintain mass and scale. It's not on square footage. It's cubic content, vertical and horizontal calculations to see what the area, the cubic content of it's very complicated, but it does provide an excellent way of preserving the character of the town, and that's what Palm Beach is doing. So I don't think that those are two extremes. I think in between the middle with some of the other communities, Gulfstream, again, I'm very familiar with, and they seem to have a good boilerplate for preserving their scale and character. So with that, I'll ask Corey just to, if there's any other items or more input you need to give us.
I think the only thing that I would just point out is that I found it interesting in the Gulfstream's code that they have a sliding scale
Correct.
for lots that are large.
Yeah, it's basically 33%, but then you get credit for larger.
Yes.
That's on the FAR. So it does work. They have also a very, and I'm sure you noticed, a setback criteria for side yards and second floors construction. They actually describe the criteria by which you add a second floor. And it predominantly sets back from the front elevation or the front plane of the ground floor by a certain percentage, and likewise on the side. So you can't go, it's what we call a wedding cake look.
Right.
And that's, again, to preserve, imposition on neighbors and also street scale. So what is your feeling? Are we in good shape?
Well, I think for what the town is, what I believe the town is trying to accomplish, which is to address scale and mass of new construction homes, I think the code in general accomplishes that. I think there are some language in the code that's inconsistent and some things that could be cleaned up. I think there's a subtle difference between the definition of floor area overall and floor area between the first and second floor when you calculate the 0.75%. So I think there's certainly some room for clarifying some of the definitions. I've also had questions, a recent question from an applicant, do I count the elevator shaft in the home? And I see that in one of the codes that's included here, they specifically exempt that from being calculated. It doesn't come right out and say it in the Town of Ocean Ridge code, but there's some language that would lead you to believe that you shouldn't count the elevator shaft. So there may be some room for clarifying. And then on the other hand, there are some codes that deal with FARs that just say It's really everything within the building envelope, irrespective of the function of that space. I don't remember which one it was, but one of the codes just lists all of the various spaces, including mechanical and attic space and so on and so forth, because at least presumably it all goes to that volume of the building.
That's what's changed.
So I think in a general sense, to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, I think that the town's regulation is not inconsistent and is a good regulation to try to address scale and massing. Like any set of codes and regulations, there's always some room for improvement, and there are changes that occur that are ongoing in real estate and construction that might warrant some adjustments to the code as well. I have certainly heard from a lot of applicants that 36% is rather small. And
That's,
on the other
this
hand,
proves that it isn't.
yeah, on the other hand,
Exactly.
you're dealing with a situation where you have a community that is historically ranch-style homes that are one-story, and trying to at least preserve some of that integrity and not create a situation where new homes are so incompatible with that scale and mass.
One area, or I'm not sure we've defined, is the question about covered, what's covered. I think that's something, and again, you can see quite a variety of ordinance differential, the differences from each town. We've got to be careful of that, because if I recall, one of the recent applicants had almost 800 square feet of covered patio. And, that brings up a suspicion that over time things could encroach into that space, because that's an abnormally large patio. I mean, it's basically a third of the house. So where are we on those points?
Comments, please.
Sure.
I'd like to address have a little discussion of what we have and what I think original intent was, and from some work that Manny and I did, what is now transpiring. We've had a FAR, floor area ratio. The way we define it in Ocean Ridge, it really is only looking at living space plus a garage. That's the only exception, is the garage. It's not an under roof, all-encompassing number. So the only controlling thing that determines overall mass is the relationship of FAR to the 35% lot coverage number. And what you can see over time is people are going from a house that's 36%, which is the the living space calculation, and they're utilizing the difference between that first floor footprint and the 35% lot coverage, and they're sucking in that available number and using it for covered spaces that they're putting in either second floor or first floor, and effectively increasing the massing, not only the massing of the building, but a difference in the proportions of the building. By utilizing the the covered porches and putting the large ones on the ground floor, you can skew the 75% first floor, second floor ratio in a way that you can have a second floor that's got more living space on it than the first floor. And you can have a building that, when you look at it from the front, is an absolute rectangle, with no setbacks, no wedding cake, no anything. And over time, Manny and I saw buildings, and I picked out 7 or 8 that we calculated. Some of them had up to, I think, 1,600 feet of, I think it was 1,600. Excuse me, 1,966 feet of covered or uncovered porches. Lots of them that are in the 1,100, 1,453. And if you went and used the rule that we proposed and said, bring everything under roof into the FAR, you got up to FARs that were 45, 49%. I mean, they're massive. So, excuse me, go ahead.
One, because that was a question I had. So in these examples where it shows with the patios and entrances and balconies included, the FAR went up excessively. Are those all covered, or are those some uncovered in these examples? Because I thought that was our discussion. They were all covered.
I'm pretty sure that.
That's more concerning to me than the uncovered.
Sure, Dave.
Yeah, didn't last meeting, we agree that we were at least going to look at having
They're all covered.
anything under a roof
Thank you.
as to be part of the FAR?
We did make that statement.
Yeah, we did
We
make
had a
it.
consensus.
And I mean, it does create a hardship perhaps, but it also has the benefit of reducing these
Yeah.
huge open areas that could someday become huge closed.
Right, so staff and I got together and we looked at, quantified these things. We didn't reach any conclusions at that meeting, and I went home, and then I have some things I would like to say or propose. If you want to bring covered porches into the size of covered porches that are reasonable, or what we're seeing, whichever words you'd like to use, how far you'd like to allow porches, 36% FAR will not work with the houses that we're seeing constructed. To change the FAR, you would have, to change what is undercover, say everything undercover comes into the FAR, you would have to raise it to get to what is being constructed. The other way is to do what some other communities do, and that is you can leave the FAR defined the way it is now, but limit as a proportion of the FAR how much you allow for uncovered porches. So you could use something like, you could say, let's take a lot between 11 and 12,000 square feet where you've got a 4,000 foot FAR for the house. You could say, we'll let you have 20% of the FAR as your uncovered porches, covered or uncovered porches, or balconies or uncovered or covered porches that affect your 75% ratio. And if you exceed that, then we would either say you need to take that number out of the FAR, living space, or we give you credit and say you could have 20%, which would let you have 800 foot of porches. But if you want to have 1,000, that extra 200 either comes out 100% out of your FAR number, or 50% of it is what some communities do. So it just gives you an incentive to not keep doing porches, because at some point it impacts your living space.
Yeah, and I think, I'm just thinking, again, as a user of this, the simpler, the better. If we get too many, I think one of the things I like, and you touched on it at the end there, was maybe looking at the 50%. Something simple that people can, and it's easy to monitor, determine. If you're allowed all hard roofs outside of the envelope of the building, i.e. covered patios, that if you allow 50% of that to be exempt of the FAR and 50% would be used against the FAR. Does that make sense? I
That's-
see.
It looks like that's what Gulfstream does. It looked,
Yeah, I mean,
Or
and
they do it
and
as
Palm
a
Beach
lot
Shores,
coverage
Palm Beach
issue.
Shores does it pretty clear. I mean, again,
Palm Beach Shores.
I think we need to look at a simple formula that is manageable both for the applicant and staff, that they can, and like Manny, you know, he's got all his calculations. He doesn't have to go. But if you have let me go back to my 800 square foot patio, 400 of that would be used for your FAR. So you could have 40% or 400 feet as a patio that's exempt of FAR, but half of that would be going against or used as your FAR. I mean, we're just exaggerating numbers here. I think it's got to be as simple formula as possible, because
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not taking one position or the other. All I'm saying is, if you change the definition of what is the FAR, and you want to accommodate the types of homes that we have seen, I mean, we've seen some houses that have porches that are not so extensive that they're distorting all these other calculations. And if you brought that porch, in any portion of that porch, into the FAR calculation, you are taking away living space.
that's a trade-off.
What I'm saying, with our number of 36%, if everything that's going to come under roof, the types of homes that we have seen that we've been happy with here on the panel, would not work. Your impact on them is going to be extensive. The ones that are going and putting the big sunrooms and things as appendages on the side of the house and all that are distorting everything.
But that's what I'm saying.
That's a different, to me, that's a different animal.
Well,
Can I,
that,
sorry, can
no,
I
go
just
ahead.
ask,
Yes, please.
is anybody in favor of increasing the FAR? Because
No.
I'm not.
I'm in favor of looking at it if what we adopt restricts the living space, because if we go with this, everything under the roof is FAR, are we talking about the garage as well?
Yeah,
No.
that's
Okay,
covered
so now we've
That's-
reduced living space
But
options.
that's normal, that's covered now.
It's exempt already.
It's exempt now. But if we change it to everything under the roof, we lose that exemption. And I think we need to consider that, myself.
I wouldn't support, I don't think any of us, I shouldn't speak for all of us, I wouldn't support adding the garages back in. We've already accepted it.
Right.
It's okay to leave it that way.
Excuse me, what, exempting the garage from what?
FAR,
He's,
The garage is in the FAR.
yeah, it is.
The garage is part of the
Oh.
FAR. That's
Yeah.
the one non-habitable space that's in the FAR.
it's included,
So
I'm
maybe-
sorry.
Maybe so we're all on the same page. You have a definition in the code for floor area minimum. That excludes garage. But then you have a definition
Definition
of floor area total. That includes your garage, carports, and portages. But it doesn't include basements or attics unless used as living space, unenclosed decks or patios, covered porches, balconies, covered or uncovered, or crawl spaces. That's your current definition in the code.
Yeah.
So it's the covered porches that's getting us in trouble.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah,
it's called open, but it really is covered.
Is it the covered
That's what-
porch have walls on all sides, 2 sides, 3 sides? What?
it has a roof.
It has a roof.
It's a
That's the
hard,
definition.
permanent roof.
So I have walls on 2 sides of my covered porch that has a permanent roof.
Right.
And
I believe it's Gulfstream that says you have to have 2 attached walls. We don't have
Yeah,
that.
we don't have that. It's a roof, a hard permanent roof. Yes, sorry.
Just a current trend to consider with garages. I believe there was the definition of conditioned versus unconditioned areas. And that's one of the reasons why garages were not included, because it's not considered conditioned. A new trend, however, is to install a dehumidifier
It's a split system.
in garages. So now we have garages that are becoming conditioned.
It's a parking issue. There's a new build in my neighborhood that it's a gym. They have never placed a car in that garage since they moved into it.
It's a consideration.
By keeping it in, it doesn't.
That's why it needs to be kept in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think we need to come up with formulas or guidelines that are very simple and easy to interpret. And I think percentages are good.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I'm talking about a construct where you take the FAR, which covers the garage plus the living space, which almost every house that's come through here recently has taken it almost to the 100th decimal place in using every available square foot. Am I not correct?
Getting pretty close, yes, sir.
I mean, okay, so to put any covered porch or covered balcony on that house and say everything under roof is going to detract from living space. And
That's a choice the applicant or owner makes. I mean,
I'm not disputing that, but that's not the norm of house that we've now allowed multiple times. Go ahead.
It seems to me that we've been looking at that type of house probably for about the last 14 months. And the first one was kind of opened my eyes and I thought, wow, walk that in and they've got a lot of living space. But each subsequent house, it seems, had more and more of it until we're where we are now.
Right.
And we like the houses in general. They all complied with our existing code. But I think there's a point where these covered, whatever they are, porches, balconies, it's just too much. And as you've said, it just magnifies the massing.
Right, but if you had a house that had like, okay, it's got a summer kitchen, a 20 by 30 summer kitchen that's roofed on the bottom floor, and if that's coming out of FAR, that's 600 square feet. You've now taken a 3,600, 4,000 square foot house of living space, and you've taken 20% of the space out of it.
So use the sliding scale percentage and give them a credit for some of that so that you're not.
And that's what
reducing it
that's
dramatically.
where I'm saying is leave the definition the way we have, but say a reasonable amount of porches is 20% or whatever. And when you go over that number, now you've got to decide yay or nay. I want porch or I want house. But I think you have to let them have
I think
But
the
if-
credit is 50-50.
Right, I was gonna say, if you
I-
just do a credit, aren't you going to basically accomplish that?
You're getting 50%. That's not counting for your FAR, what I'm suggesting. You know, and 50% is going to be counted for your FAR. I mean, that's a decision you make as a designer, owner, whoever, which is
That's
more
gonna give
important.
you some for free and
Yeah.
some for not.
It's not like we're saying all covered patios or porches are going to be used against the FAR.
Right, it's Florida, we want outdoor living space.
Yeah, and
I'm not disputing
what
that.
I'm
I'm
just
just-
about to say
I'm
is
just
that most of us live outside.
I'm just saying when
It's living space.
when I go in and I've gone onto Papa and looked at basically every house in this town, that would be impacting. I mean, and I'm the one that brought this subject up, but I think that goes too far, is what I'm saying.
I'm sorry, Carla, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just thinking some things along the line, I don't know if, but, you know, I was thinking of how we do the credit in regards if you have open area. But saying, okay, the first 300 feet are completely not counted, after that is 50%.
That's what I was.
And then, so, I mean, and that way you don't have to do 20%, you don't have to say a percentage, but you say square feet, 300 square feet or 400 square feet, it's completely out of the FAR, but then after that is 50%. I don't know if that's, if you guys would consider that. And that way it's one number, and then after that is 50%.
So you're saying you do it by square foot rather than percentage of the,
Square foot at first, maybe do 400 square foot. not
and have a
800.
threshold, you mean?
But the threshold has to change with the lot size.
And the house
I
side.
mean-
and the
10
house
by
size.
30 is a pretty big patio. It's,
Well,
it has to be a variable scale, or you can't just mandate across the board, I think.
I mean, that percent, I picked a percentage. It could be 8, could be 20, could be 15, could be 10. I mean, whatever you think is reasonable covered porches to allow somebody to have based on historic context of the neighborhoods. And then, I don't know whether you want to say it's, I don't like this word penalty, but there's an impact. You're making a choice if you then exceed that amount. But the houses that we've seen come in here, the FAR, which is, as I said, garage and living space, are maxed out every time. So,
But then they have 1,000 square feet of patio, so the
Correct,
the impact to the
which I
scale.
thought was excessive and is distorting the shape and proportion of the house. I agree with that, but I don't think the answer is 0 and everything has to come out of the FAR. I think that's gone to the other extreme too far.
And we don't think that the pervious impervious is controlling that enough.
No,
Because
No.
that's a,
the 35% only lot coverage only protects you with a single story building.
Right.
It actually
Don't
is, oh, go on.
okay.
Don't use FAR and lot coverage. They're completely different.
I know, but I was
They're
asking if one
they're
impact-
different, but they're intertwined.
Oh, they're intertwined, but they're different. You can't-
Absolutely.
you can't-
But the lot coverage, what it has done is by being able to have that big footprint, you end up with a 2-story FAR house and a lot coverage that's letting you put all these covered porches on there that there's nothing regulating it until you hit that 35% limit. Now you've got a massive building.
Well, I think we may be all speaking the same language or trying. I think even David, I agree, has acknowledged that large patios are imposing and they should be contained, or
I have a large patio.
I have a number of patios. I'm pleading just to get a simple, if it's a sliding
Well, I think
scale, or,
Personally,
I don't like, let me, sorry, if I,
go ahead.
I'm totally against increasing FAR, our FAR. I think, and I'll take a vote if necessary to find out, but I think there's a lot of nodding here. So
I
we're
think you get
fixing,
consensus.
bigger than that. Now we just have to look at the issues that have come up over the last 14 months or whatever it was, where people are exaggerating their covered space, and it's having a severe impact on the scale
Correct.
of whatever improvement they're doing. So it seems, and if we can come up to a percentage where we're allowing an owner to build a patio, but the size of that patio, 50% of it will go against the FAR and 50% of it won't. I'm trying to just simplify it here because I think we're all.
I think it's simplified. I just think it's overly restricted. It's not in keeping not only with new homes, that's not in keeping with historic use.
So why don't you take one of the most egregious examples and see what the 50/50 would do? And let's figure out if it's too
It would take
restrictive or not.
it would take 1,000 feet of living space out of the house.
Of 50% of one of these.
If you wanted 2,000
Square feet of patio.
Yeah.
No, it's not that much. That's
That's what it would do.
I hate to, I've done this a number of times, and I said like Palm Beach with a cubic, that's even worse. But 50% is a reasonable margin or criteria to give.
I would like to propose that we leave the definition the way we have it, that it's permissible, it's outside of the FAR to have, and we'll pick a percentage. I'll put forward 10% to start out. So on a 4,000 square foot house, you could have 400 feet of covered porch, and it didn't do anything. And that's very simple to do. And when you exceed that number, then the 50% strikes you. So if you can have 400, if you want to have 800, 200 is going to come out of your living space. 50% of it.
So
But I think
you're creating a sliding scale.
But and we can argue what that first number should be, 10, 15, 20, or 2, whatever it is. I'm just saying, but historically we've had covered porches. They've just grown. I don't think the answer is 0. So that the porch comes right out of the house.
No,
But the
that's
50% rule does that. It means that
Yeah.
your first 10 feet is 5 feet out of your FAR.
Right.
Yeah, so that's different than we have now. I think it's kind of regressive.
I think that's too regressive.
Yeah.
Is my point. So
I'm open.
pardon?
I'm open to a
And
suggestion.
I'm clarifying again that we're strictly speaking covered, not
Right.
uncovered.
A hard,
Yes.
permanent roof.
Yes. we're
It's
looking
not
at
your
that.
pool deck.
No,
Right, it's not anyone's,
Right.
like.
or a
this little
screened-in
pat-
porch is exempt,
A screened in porch, but has a roof, it would
but it
count.
doesn't have a roof.
Oh,
I mean, if it was one of those
cage?
bird cage.
oh, yeah, no. No, I understand.
Let's not get into that.
That's
That's a whole different topic.
I'm just trying to stir it up here because we need to.
But that's what I was trying to clarify, because then, if you came in, you could do pavers with grass between it, but you have a roof over it. And so the definition is if it has a permanent roof,
That's correct.
just clarifying.
Well, I think Neil's suggestion is a good, it's intuitively works. Do we need to do some checking it against
I mean,
anything to know
we
whether?
can model some examples and
Right.
bring them back.
Could you do that and also include Mark's
Sure,
thoughts?
yeah. A versus B, absolutely,
Sure.
absolutely.
Well, Mark's is pretty clear, like, you take that like you said, if you started with
If you use that,
3956 and Manny's next calculation's 5488, including the covered patios,
Which
3
property?
inlet K,
That's the end.
that's 1,548 or something like that difference square feet. If you got a 50% credit, that means 700's coming out of the original 39, right? So now you're reducing your house from 3,900 square feet to
20%.
31,
That's what I was saying, yeah.
right? But 50/50.
that's a
all.
choice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what designers are for. You,
I'm not disputing that, Mark. All I'm just saying is.
because the point is,
We just never built to that standard in the town.
but it has been used in other communities successfully and to the Palm Beach and Gulfstream are, I think, what we're trying to emulate.
Emulate.
Because they haven't been able to maintain the scale and the impact to.
I mean, once you get into the 14,000 square foot and bigger houses, you're still going to get a big house using Mark's way or what I propose. But when you're on the 10,000 foot lot, the 11,000 foot lot, which is up to 12,000 and less is like half the lots in the town or more, you're impacting the living space of the house severely by.
It's patio or living. I hate to be.
Yeah, I get a little nervous that somebody says, okay, I'm not a patio guy, and we get a 0 patio house,
Correct.
which I
But-
guess
but
is
it's a-
allowable under the
Yeah,
codes
but
today,
but he's still 30%, 36%.
right. But it's
It's
probably
his-
not as attractive of
Well, that's-
aesthetically of a property.
I think what Manny and I would be able to say is if you go back, we have not lived in a community with 36% volume structures because the porches have always been there. What's happened now is they've just gotten gigantic.
Can I ask, Manny, do you want to come up and just share into this discussion on what you've seen and, you know, I mean,
On the spot.
your name has been used many times, so I'm just putting you on the spot.
Okay.
No, can you respond to what from
Oh,
your findings or your experience?
Well, you're talking about mass. You gotta remember though, the mass on the first floor, when you go to a second floor, you do have safety with the 75% rule. So I think when Neil was mentioned, that we're gonna be ending up having a rectangle, but you've got that 75% rule that regulates the second floor to the first floor. Your question, well, it's kind of difficult for me to, my position is to this, I just enforce what I read. And for me to give you some sort of opinion, it's kind of difficult for me because I never done it. Although when I was with Neil, we did do a lot of talking as to, well, how things should be, which I agreed with. At the end, it simplifies it for me. How you people decide to go with, the percentages to counting a covered porch or uncovered porch to the far. I wish I could be more helpful, but
No, that's okay.
there's nothing for me to really elaborate on.
Do the covered balconies fall under the FAR? Because that's a big trend right now.
No.
No,
And
it falls under the 75% ratio
Sure,
though.
yeah, yes.
So we're getting a lot of square looking homes with these.
Well,
Second
that's my
floor.
point, is the bigger you make the porch on the ground floor, the more square you can make the building later, okay? Because the ratio is a numerator denominator thing, correct? 3 to 4. So if you make the denominator bigger by putting a ground floor porch, you can have more covered balcony on the second floor. And if you put that covered porch at the back of the building or out of your eyesight, road view, that can be a perfect rectangle. That's what, and we've got them.
Oh, yeah, I got one. I don't like mine either.
All right,
I don't know the answer.
Corey, no, you're ducking. I don't blame you. Well, this is still an open discussion. I mean, I'll entertain a motion to pass on to staff to look at.
I think Neil already made one.
Can you repeat it again? Try to short.
Well, I mean, you're talking, are you now saying a solution, propose a solution to the issue? Or are we talking about the issue of going back and looking at some more information for you? Those two items have come up. Which one are you asking me to address?
The initial one.
I propose that we fix a percentage, leave the FAR the way it is, leave the definition of the FAR the way it is, that we propose a percentage of the FAR for covered porches and covered balconies that remain exempt, and anything that exceeds that has a percentage penalty to be determined. 50, if we want to say 50% to start out now to look at, that's the proposal I would put forward, or I am putting forward,
Based on the total square footage of the house, not on the first floor square footage.
based on the FAR.
FAR,
the FAR
which
calculation.
is total square footage.
I would say anything that exceeds that percentage, instead of saying a penalty, anything that exceeds that is shared 50/50. 50 counted as FAR, 50 not.
So at 10%,
It's the same
a
thing.
5,000 square foot FAR house would have a 500 square foot allowable, which is as big as a 2-car garage.
Correct.
That's a pretty big allowable.
But when you spread it out, upper, lower, front, back,
It's not upper though.
It's not upper.
what?
Upper didn't count.
Upper doesn't count in
That's
what?
what Manny said. Second floor coverage is not,
75%.
is under the 75% rule. It's not under the covered areas rule.
You mean lot coverage, or is that what you're saying?
No, a covered deck on the second floor.
Is not what? It would still have,
I'm confused.
It still goes in the FAR.
It's, no,
you
it's
still
not.
have, you've got you would have the FAR structure, however you determine it, 1 story or 2, proportion, whatever. So without any porches, it's got to be 75%. If you do covered porches or covered balconies, you're still going to have to meet the 75%. But the amount of porches and where you distribute them would only be limited by X% of the FAR number and 50% of the amount that you're willing to go over that.
Then we would have to define.
But it is upper and lower.
We would have to define those second floor covered porches as being part of this.
They're already included in the 75% calculation.
They're not.
They're not in the FAR. Correct. I'm saying leave the FAR definition the way it is now.
Yeah.
No, I
I
think we're-
agree with that, but what I'm saying is we're adding a new caveat for additional covered porches. And do we, currently, no covered porches are calculated other than the 75% second floor rule. The rest of them, that's where we got here, is you can build as big as you want as long as you don't exceed your lot coverage. So since it's been a first floor ground level issue, if we're going to create this definition, we ought to include
Actually,
covered
but
on
my
the second
point
floor.
is the intertwining, when you made the first floor bigger, you allowed more covered porches on the second floor right now. It's already
And that's,
related.
yeah, it's already related.
So you're allowed
So
over.
they should be included in, if it's 10%, covered porches on the second floor.
I'm saying you take the 10%, that's your total floor area of porches, and you put them
Up or
where
down.
you want,
Up or
but
down.
you still got to stay within the 75% up or down rule.
But it counts for both.
Yes.
Should
And if
we,
it's uncovered on the second floor,
It's
you can
not
do what you want.
correct.
That's not
That's
true.
the- well,
That's
that's
not
next
true,
time.
and it's gonna come up with, that's not true, because that comes into, pardon?
Go ahead, sorry.
If it becomes a balcony, so you've got access to it, it now comes back into the 75% rule. This is more of the intertwining. So now an uncovered thing is part of 75%.
okay, should we take Neil's motion and make it a motion to have staff look at this
Yes.
and give us
Yeah,
That's
the
what I'm
examples,
advocating.
written hard examples of what this will actually do, so we can see what we're doing before we take this any
No, I have no
further.
problem with that.
That's the right.
Sorry.
That's-
I think
Sorry,
there's too
sorry,
much
excuse me.
confusion.
Yes,
I think just a quick question, because Member Hutchins brought it up, and maybe we could take Neil's idea and do the same ones we did with how Neil would like them calculated, and also with the 50%, so you all can see the difference.
Yes, that's what we
That's what we're saying.
agreed before.
So,
Right.
Yes.
We will do all, so you have.
So just the 50/50 or with an allowable amount and then 50/50.
the same example
Two
we
options.
used, right?
Well, I second that.
good, thank you.
Well done.
You're surrounded by two
You
bad
got us out of
guys
the- got us out of the box.
All right, so can we
Good
have
luck, Carla.
we have a motion by Neil, second by Rick. Can we call the roll? Do we
I
need-
would just like to hear it read one more time, but
Okay.
I'm going to vote in favor of it. I just want to make sure. Is it what Carla just threw back at us?
Again, it's another workshop. I mean, it's another.
Yes.
It's
meeting.
a
It's a
request for
comparison, yes.
analysis.
I definitely in favor of that.
So I don't think we have to.
It's not adopting that as a rule. It's
Right.
adopting that
All
as
right,
a
Let's just
study.
get confirmed voting.
Yes,
All in favor?
yes.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Good
Good
discussion,
homework
guys.
there, Dan.
Thanks for the help, Nanny.
Very lot of-
I want to point out that
Board. Thank you.
alternate Robert Rodriguez is visiting the first time, and we'd like him to return. So it's not normally like this, Robert.
I'm just trying to stay here and keep my mouth.
Well, no, you should-
It's more like what you saw about the koi pond.
Yeah. Sorry,
I'm
any
sorry.
comment? Mac, you'd have to leave your equipment here outside if you came up here. Okay, moving on to item 4, ordinance review, flat roofs. And Christie, I'm going to ask you to go
Yes, sir.
through this since you wrote such a
All right, so.
brilliant.
As you may recall, we've been looking at this several times before. And as Member Hutchins had pointed out, there's a lot of different things that intertwine when you're looking at this issue. But what the last consensus and direction was for the front elevations, as you recall, this ordinance does really two things. The front elevations, we're extending those to all elevations for doors and window coverage and substantial articulation. But we're exempting sheds in storage buildings that are 100 square feet or less. So that's the change in the proposed ordinance. Then regarding the flat roofs, we're going to allow flat roofs. So we're going to allow 2 roof systems in the town. You can have a pitched roof or you can have a flat roof. You have a flat roof, your tie beam is going to be at 14 feet for 1 story, 24 foot for a 2-story. Then we talk about flat roof areas. And this is ideally your uncovered flat roof area. And what we decided on was to limit the ability to have a flat roof area, whether you have a pitched roof or a flat roof. The flat roof area can be no higher than a 14-foot maximum height. And I'll go back to that. We are going to limit access to the flat roof area to be internal only, except for obviously if it's repair or maintenance or some type of emergency. We're eliminating the parapets on pitched roofs. Unless your pitched roof has a flat roof area, then you can have a parapet up to 3 feet. And then if you have a flat roof, on your flat roof, you could have a parapet, and around your flat roof area, it could be up to 3 feet. Right, because right now I believe we have a parapet limitation of 32. 32, so
Correct.
allowing up to 3 feet on a flat roof if you have a flat roof area.
Christie, when you say area, you mean recreational space?
Correct.
So we're
Correct.
So we'll
distinguishing
get back
flat
to that.
roof from flat roof area.
Now, just so we're all on the same page, currently in the code, we allow for flat roof area with pitched roofs. That flat roof area can be up to a maximum of 20% if you use it as outdoor space, recreational space. To calculate that 20%, you include all roofed areas, including living areas, porches, patios, garages, portiches, carports, entrances, and balconies. So we had a property before us recently that you may have heard about that has a lot of roofed areas. So their flat roof area that they would be allowed under our existing code
It's enormous.
is enormous.
Right.
Like
So,
how big, do you recall?
I don't remember
Over
what the
1,000
exact-
square feet?
Yeah.
Yes, so
Wow.
1900, the one I just
Over
quoted you.
2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So
Yeah,
it was.
1966.
Yeah, so just so you know, that 20% is pretty big because it includes everything. So when Manny does his calculation, he's got to look at all these different areas where there's a potential roof over them, and all of that goes into that calculation. So that's currently what's allowed in the code. Right now, the draft ordinance doesn't change that 20% maximum, and it doesn't change the definition. It keeps it the same. And so that's one consideration for y'all to consider. The current proposed ordinance would limit your flat roof area to the building setbacks, so that your flat roof area couldn't extend over your regular building setbacks, front, rear, and sides. The current ordinance also has language in it dealing with the issue of the 14-foot max height for the flat roof area. One thing that came up discussing this is now as our homes are getting higher and higher because of the FEMA maps, looking at that 14-foot max height for a flat roof area, the idea was, so you're not looking into your neighbor's yard or things like that, that if your house now has to be built up substantially, your new house, your flat roof area may end up being a lot higher than your 14-foot max. That gets sort of beyond my area, but it's another thing. So I've included language in the proposed ordinance, which is other language we use in the code that tries to limit how high something can go if you really have to build up your house. So that's in there. What I also included are the graphics that are in our current code, because really a lot of this is not actually spelled out in the text of our code. It's actually in our little graphics. You got to get out your magnifying glass and look at what the graphic says to figure out that's where the calculation is for the 20% and those types of things. And what I would propose is that since we're now going to have two roof systems, that we do these graphics for both the flat roof and the pitch roof to give people examples to see how all this would work. Oh. Jerry's looking at me like, oh dear Lord.
I mean, I'm not in favor of the party decks, and the summer kitchens on them are 20%, 10%. A balcony is a balcony. Beyond that, I'm not in favor of it. Now, are we trying to avoid regressively going back into our code that said 20%? Is that because these get into big numbers? You get, it's not that hard to get a 500 or 1,000 square foot. I'll call it a party deck, and it's especially significant with these higher elevation houses now.
Oh, yeah. No, it's,
But then I want to use my house as an example, and I would not build my house today, but I understand why it's that way, being on the ocean, but having Old Ocean bifurcating. We live upside down. We live on the second floor. My first floor is guest space. My second floor goes out onto a deck. My pool is elevated. That in some circumstances would be considered that party deck.
Yeah, and you're not the only one along Old Ocean,
No,
backing
there's
Old Ocean.
three identical
Yeah,
houses.
Kind of a neat,
How's that a
That's a balcony, that's a second floor balcony, not a flat roof.
Oh, well, there's part of it that is a deck because there's a permanent roof structure over it, and then the rest of it is open.
Yeah.
But it's still a second floor. There's a room underneath it that houses the pool.
But aren't we talking about the top decks as?
Well, this would be my
flat roof?
14-foot level. This would be.
Are you
twin second
RSF
floor.
or RSC?
I don't even know.
RSC.
but I think
I think I'm RSF.
that those houses that front on Ocean and Old Ocean
Well, that's because
have such an elevation difference.
It's a Dune impact.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
they're
We're at
They're-
21 feet already.
they're not what we're talking
Because
about.
you're technically have a basement and then the second,
Yeah.
first floor, second.
Okay,
That's how I would view it, yeah.
okay. It's just, I'm just trying to understand because.
It's a nice party deck, by the way.
George, looking at this ordinance, can we partition the discussion? Can we go back to the first item you covered, which was front front elevations, et cetera. I motion that we accept the changes, and let's just get that piece out of the
Yeah.
equation. Does anybody second that?
So that's-
Okay,
We're talking about window coverage.
correct.
Yeah, that first section is fine.
Right.
All right,
So
the,
do we have to have a motion in that, or?
I made it. I made a
No,
motion to accept.
to a vote.
We
No.
have to throw it out to the audience.
Any public
So
discussion?
wait, are you guys breaking it up into sections and then making?
Just
motions?
for,
Yeah.
Wait.
just for, so we don't keep going back and forth here.
Cross pollinating.
Right, Bob? Good Lord.
No more, please.
All right,
It
so-
feels like a Monday.
So I made a motion and it got a
Second.
second. Aye.
Aye. All in
Aye.
favor?
All right,
Aye, unanimous.
the piece that is the flat roof 14 foot, I don't see how that gets into this, what I called at the time, the skyline issue of, it was raising a 2-story house that was going to get into being way above the other houses. To raise a first floor, that's going to happen. And I don't see how we can pull down a first floor 3 feet and say you can only have a single story house now that's 11 foot tall. That doesn't work.
If you want a deck off of it.
If you just want a flat roof, single story, whatever. So I just don't think that applies
Okay,
Or a
so-
single story,
for the single story
Yeah,
portion
I
or
agree
single
with you.
story house, pardon?
I agree with you.
So I would just like to strike this.
The 14-foot part?
Whatever this is on the memorandum that's on
1
page
foot
2.
reduction for 7 feet of rise or something like that. That works better for a 2-story house.
But a 2-story flat roof is still only 24.
24 feet,
So it's nowhere near what a gabled roof,
right.
pitched roof house is. So I just don't even think that for any flat roof structures, I don't think FEMA elevation has an impact.
Quick question, just for clarification, you guys were talking about number 2, about the piping height, changing it from 14.
No.
No.
Well, it's on the
Max
second
height.
page is the
Page
first
top.
discussion of it, but it actually occurs on,
Oh, the highlighted portion?
Yes.
The highlight.
yeah, it's at number 3 of section 3, number
So I,
1, paragraph 3.
Three.
so I can remove that. I just want to mention, so in the maximum building height that is currently in the RSF and RSE code requirements, it does say that wherever a base flood elevation is dictated by the FEMA National Flood Insurance Program maps, requiring the finished floor elevation to be above 7 feet in AVD, for every foot above 7 feet in AVD, there shall be a corresponding decrease of 1 foot in the maximum building.
That was written when we didn't allow flat roofs. This is a flat roof impact. And I'm saying it doesn't impact the skyline, so we need to not put this kind of coverage in. We need to,
Make it just for pitched roofs? Which is
I
what it
mean, in
was.
effect, that's what it is. That's what it's doing.
So that'll ultimately drive more flat roofs, but it does lower the skyline.
Mark?
I'm getting confused here.
I'd have to see the parse of the wording, which I've done. So, but the single
You want to just,
The single floor one definitely doesn't apply.
it's not worth deferring for further study rather than, or what, do you want to strike it, you said?
Because we're talking about the flat roof area maximum height that your flat roof area could be, not the tiding for your flat roof. It's the actual
Surface.
outdoor living space
Surface.
surface. So if you're limiting your maximum building height based on this FEMA stuff, is there a need to limit the maximum height of the flat roof area where people will be outside recreating if this house needs to be built above 7 feet in AVD?
Oh, you're saying like, so the house has been brought down a foot, they could actually go up with the deck to 14 if the house had kept being brought down.
What?
No.
I'm confused.
But can't it just be whatever the tie beam is? That way, if the tie beam is brought down, it's just the tie beam height. And that way it doesn't get complicated in regards to the elevation, it's just whatever your tie beam is. If you have to bring your tie beam down to 10 foot, it's just a tie beam of 10 foot, and that's gonna be where your flat
Why
area
would
is.
you be doing that?
If anybody wanted to, and that
But
way
that's
it's
what's in our
controlled.
code, so we need to distinguish
No, I
if
understand. No, I
it's
understand.
pitched roof versus flat roof.
We voted on all that stuff.
The stuff that, yeah, but the stuff we did before did not consider flat roof houses at
You're
all.
right, you're right. So
So my
either
point,
clarify this as being limited to a pitched roof system, and then your flat roof would not be impacted by the FEMA flood maps. You'd still have a max tie beam.
the
right?
tie beam height there would be controlling rather than on the pitched roof, the top of the pitched roof now is controlling.
So we need, it just brought up another area to
The
correct.
the pitched roof
Correct, that's what you
maximum
did.
now is 34 feet, correct?
36.
36. So,
36 from the first floor elevation plus whatever FEMA,
so
9 feet, is it?
So if you
Yeah.
wanted a pitched roof and didn't want to sacrifice that 1
10.
foot per 7, if you put a lesser pitch on the roof, you still have a pitched roof, correct? If you go to the maximum pitch, you're gonna have to lower the house. But if you go to a lesser pitch,
That is
you,
correct.
the reduction of 1 foot per 7
But
is not,
Is diminished.
Yeah,
to whatever our minimum is.
the FEMA adjustment was max height, it wasn't tie beam. And I don't see why single story one, it's not tie beam either, because it could have a parapet. Correct?
Could.
And so if it has a parapet, the parapet height's the limit, but even with a parapet, the flat roof, tie beam plus parapet isn't going to equal a pitched roof height.
But visually, a pitched roof falling away
It's
looks
diminishing,
different.
diminishing.
Different than a flat roof.
Oh, exactly, the mass, I
And
understand.
that's,
the mass.
so we want to be
my-
very careful about that.
Yeah, my thing is that vertical height.
so is it possible for us to just make a motion that gets the flat roof homes out of this requirement that we created for pitched roofs?
And we're still talking about it above just the first floor only on the second floor.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. I don't think the first floor part here applies at all,
No, the elevation.
but
Yeah.
overall,
All right. This one has gone round.
I think, I mean, I think there's other language needs to be added somehow so that at least we state what is okay, one's or flat versus pitch. Right now, we're only talking about pitch. But I don't think this part's right.
Christie, what's your feeling?
Well, what I can do is I can remove the highlighted language that's in with the flat roof regarding the FEMA stuff, remove it from there, and then go into this section on maximum building height and clarify that reduction in maximum building height based on FEMA would then be specific to a pitched roof system.
As long as, I mean, I think this is gonna take some mental arithmetic. We have to consider what Rick is saying, that we don't then allow you to do a,
36-foot flat roof
Flat
house.
roofs.
so that's kind of hard to wing right here, just. doing it all.
Yeah,
So,
this is,
We have a high beam limitation. And we have a parapet limitation.
so
The
you're
high beam
saying
is 24, parapet is
32.
32 inches. So there's no way that it can go up to 36. So there's a physical limitation. based
That's
on the
what,
high
that's
beam.
what I think initially.
So that would never be.
So what would the max be with that?
It would be 24, 26 foot 2 inches.
Okay,
Is that correct?
great.
which is, yeah,
Sorry.
That's,
20,
24,
Almost
27
27.
plus
almost
your
27.
FEMA elevation, you're, I think before we were limiting houses, they wouldn't be taller than 53 feet or something.
Everything,
all right, so Christie,
Yes,
are you getting some direction? Okay,
And then the third item, the flat roofs, the 20%. Let me go back to the intertwining again. Let's take one of these houses that's got 1,200, 1,500, almost 2,000 foot of covered porches down on the bottom floor. That will now affect the 20% calculation. I don't think initially when the 15/20% thing was ever envisioned, that those types of circumstances were envisioned. So I'm going to propose that we take the 20% or 15%, whichever number we pick, and again, say that comes from, is limited to the far footprint of the house.
for the flat roof recreational area,
Mm,
is what you're saying?
I'm backing up here. You have a good point there that, we didn't anticipate flat roofs when the original ordinance. And that's an excellent point because now we've adopted ordinance to have flat roofs. Everything previously was pitched roofs only with limited amount of flat roof on the second
So
floor.
for a hybrid house, you'd be taking the footprint of your FAR structure, and now you allow some percentage of that, not all these appurtenance covered porches or balconies or whatever, but it's a defined number.
For the flat
Yeah.
roof area.
Correct.
Maximum.
And I don't think a number needs to be 15 or 20. We need to just pick one number.
a square footage,
No,
Maximum.
a percentage.
a percentage.
Percentage, yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So you'd be now coming down into the range of 250 to, even on the biggest of the houses, 400 or 500 square feet, not thousands like you would.
But what's the percentage?
Pardon?
What percentage?
Again, I would like to go back now and model it at say 15 or 20 and let you decide what you.
So we want to figure out what the biggest total horizontal ground surface area covered by roof.
See, that's a
And
bad
then-
definition there.
Yeah.
We don't define what's our term?
Total horizontal ground surface area covered
Yeah,
by roof. I
Okay.
think that's not,
With overhangs or without overhangs. You know, other towns say, or like Gulfstream says, the overhangs aren't calculated.
Correct.
So it's actually a footprint number rather
it
than,
goes to, yeah,
It's
to the
vertical.
outside of the,
because that can be a huge number when you start sprawling everything out. So just tighten up the definition and then, if you had a hybrid house, do you want to see a flat roof area? And then, again, this is all your flat roofs. As big as a 2-car garage or bigger than a 2-car garage, or, that needs a consensus as to what's.
Yeah.
uh,
what,
We're not, because we're letting you do the entire house flat roof. And I know Mark has made made the statement in the past that he doesn't like hybrid, correct?
You took the words right out of my mouth. If we're encouraging hybrids, then
Yeah,
I'm out.
well, so do we, I mean, that's the use of the flat roof, right, is to make the pitched roof house have a party space, have a,
Well, a deck as
A
a
deck.
flat roof is fine, but again, a percentage needs to be established to limit that,
right?
so that it doesn't become disproportionate to the
And I'm-
facade or the.
And I'm saying locking it into the FAR footprint gives you something that is definable and established, and then you just figure out what percentage of that you think is appropriate.
It is limited on the pitched roof house already, isn't it? The
The
amount
flat-
of flat roof.
yes.
Yeah.
20%.
Yes, that's what it said.
How would 20% work for the flat roof?
'Cause
How would 20%?
Well,
Yeah.
right now it's massive if you have an estate.
If it's, never mind.
Now, are we talking about, are we talking about the entertainment area now of a
Yes.
flat roof, totally flat roof building?
For, yes,
Okay,
flat roof area, what we're referring to today is flat roof area.
I don't,
How does that work?
it's 20% now, right?
Yeah, it's 20% on a pitched roof.
I
now.
mean, that's what I circled.
Oh,
But that was on pitched roof houses, right? It's just 20% of a pitched roof house could be, and I guess it was allowable to use it as deck under the old code. And we've got higher elevations now. I mean, I'm just looking to avoid summer kitchens and umbrellas and, and these things that even at the one-story level with the FEMA elevation gains are looking down on the neighbor, especially the neighbor that isn't at the new FEMA.
we do have them in town already.
It's
You're
gonna
aware,
happen.
I hope.
Yeah, but they're not at the new FEMA elevations.
Didn't you all already vote that there would be no recreation now?
Yes, that's where we were before I went out of town.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah,
but we realize that that can exist on a pitched roof house, and we can't not do it on a flat roof house. It already exists. Does it not?
Right. Currently,
Yeah.
the code only speaks right now to pitched roofs. Under the current code for pitched roofs, you could have, of that pitched roof, 15% that can be flat roof. You can go up to 20% if you use that flat roof as an outdoor space area.
So it's covered.
So that's currently allowed in the code, and there's no limitation on how high, if it can be on your second story,
correct.
what,
We don't
no
limit it to which
limitations
floor.
regarding height, no limitations regarding access. You can build stairway up to,
Right.
under our existing code.
Doesn't mean
But at
it
the
was
last-
a good
last-
idea, yeah.
At the last meeting, though, didn't we have a consensus that the recreation would be restricted to any on flat roof, whether it's attached to a hybrid house or a flat roof house, only on top of the first story?
Correct.
Correct. That's
Yes.
that 14
So
foot.
does that, are you still totally opposed to that, Rick? Or-
That's that 14-foot height limitation.
Right.
Well,
I know you all discussed this, and that's what you voted on at your last meeting, but in your joint workshop with the town commission, didn't you all, as a group, as the town commission and planning and zoning commission, vote that you wanted to get rid of recreation on roofs?
Yes.
Yeah.
That did happen.
And
Okay,
that's
so
what-
just be cognizant of that, because if you go through all this and then send it to the town commission, and the town commission is still of the opinion that they want to get rid of recreation on the roofs, then they're probably gonna send this back to you.
Yeah, I'm
Just
kind of that position
Yeah,
beyond
I think we
balcony.
Mark, did you make a comment in the past that by trying to say that we couldn't have recreational use, we were opening up some liability issue?
Was that Chris?
No, I said my only issue was the height of the parapet.
Okay.
It's a liability. 'Cause
I think we
36
did talk about the inequity of if you're gonna allow pitched roofs to have a flat roof recreational area, But then if you have a flat roof system, you're not going to be able to have a recreational area. I think that was discussed as it seems inequitable to differentiate between roofing systems as to whether or not you can have an outdoor.
I agree with that.
And as an outdoor recreational area, are we saying that on the second floor, a balcony, a covered balcony that's off of the second floor can't be used as recreation? Is that what, that, because that's not the intent of, I'm trying to eliminate third story on the roof, on the true top roof.
The highest point of it.
It's not about a second floor balcony. This is about the roof.
Right,
And
but
the way we're defining the flat roof area is technically supposed to be above the first floor, not on the second floor.
Right.
It's just above the first floor, and that's why Christy was referring to the 14-foot height. So it could be just above the first floor. So we're
right,
not
so your second
discussing a
floor
second- above the second floor.
continuation,
Yes, exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, we know it's on a one-story.
Mhm. So
Period.
we're not discussing anymore being all the way on the top like we have today.
But we did adopt a position once in the past, and it was at the commission that no
At the
recreation.
workshop.
Right.
But
And
just keep in mind also, you guys do allow balconies, and I think you wanted the discussion. There's no real difference between a balcony and a flat roof deck area as
There's
defined
not.
in our code.
Well, in actuality,
Yeah, it's
So, obviously, there are a lot of technical language here. So I think the nuance is flat roof and flat roof area. So example, you have a garage on the ground floor. You decide you wanted to make the roof above the garage flat. You do that. Then you wanted to attach this to your master bedroom and you walk out onto that area. That is a recreational space. That's the flat roof area. What we're not allowing is a stairs from your master bedroom on top of the second floor area and having a recreational area
on
there.
the top.
But it can happen at the 14-foot level. I just agree with Neil here, is that the fact that we mentioned base, the finished floor level, 14 feet above the finished floor level. I believe that's enough to tether the height of the building. Because that's one of the things that that was adjusted to, was finished floor level when FEMA height dictates that the house be above the 7-foot datum. So literally, the finished floor is moving with the
Proportionally.
14-foot tie beam, so that will move along.
That's very,
So, that will be redundant for us to define it.
May I use my commissioner comment time early? I give you, I think a lot has changed with the FEMA elevations changes. And I can give you an example. Most of us know is a home, I think it's owned by Betty Bingham, but it's on the southwest corner of Ocean and A1A. And it has a breezeway attached garage with a stairway you can see going up to it above recreational. That's a lovely design. I like that home. It's of a classic of that period. We're in a different world now. That house, whatever height that is above the street level, isn't that high. Now, at the last, in the April meeting, I asked the other commissioners if they could drive by 54 Spanish River Drive, which is under construction. That's now built to new FEMA standards. And the elevation of the first floor is 10 foot. Yeah, and we have a street that's at 0 feet. So it already, you're looking up to the first floor from the street. You add whatever height we can do, 14 feet on top of that, and then put a parapet, a roof deck. That's high. It's a different world now. Now that's a 2-story house, but I'm saying if that were only a 1-story,
Sure.
look how high it gets before you get to the second
75 foot tall,
floor deck. And
They're 20 feet above the street.
I think I'm back to the workshop. Balconies are fine, but recreational space on the second on roof decks, I'm not personally in favor
Well, I
of
mean,
because
it's
of
about-
higher
Can I,
elevations.
can I ask
But
what's
how do you,
the definition of a balcony and a recreational space?
it's still a recreational space. That's the part that I'm
Once you
getting
make it
hung
a
up on.
balcony, it's open for any,
And we
use.
can't,
I think
because FEMA raised this elevation, we can't restrict a homeowner from, I don't think we want to restrict a homeowner from having a balcony there, even though I do understand it's excessively high, but we didn't create that hardship.
that
FEMA
particular
did.
case is because Durrani and I wrestled with this one because that's what, E or X zone
Which one?
on Marlin,
Marlin? Oh,
Marlin
that's
is
a VE.
VE.
It's a VE zone.
And that, that's plus 12, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
Plus 12 is your
So
Your
that's that.
FEMA
Down the
height,
cul-de-sac of Marlin.
which is almost 4 feet higher than what we are, have to
Crazy.
comply with. So, yeah, and that's just because it's on the intercoastal, and fortunately, not that many lots like that in town, but it does wake you up to the impact.
I
And,
know, it's awful.
and we're going to have for a long time a mixture of older homes and newer homes being built next to each other. And, we need to be sensitive to that. That's part of the purpose of this group.
I agree with
So
that.
Fiona,
we can define a balcony, I think, either by square footage or, I don't think that's got to be that hard.
What about
And it-
location of the balcony, whether it's front or back and not on sides, or can you, that may be another option to try and preserve some. I mean, even on the back, you still look at your neighbor, but if you're on the side, you're dead center, you're,
Yeah.
that's
A
more.
side balcony?
Oh, you have a wraparound.
Yeah.
There are a number of them. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave very shortly, so where do we want to continue this? Or how do we, it's obviously, I don't think we have a consensus here, Christie.
Well, I think
I don't think,
ordinance-
I'm
I
not,
think
let
our
me-
lack of consensus is whether we have recreation or no recreation. Correct?
but I don't know
obviously-
how you take a balcony and not expect it to be used as recreation.
I agree. That's my
That's by nature of a balcony, that's an outdoor space. You can't mandate how the occupant utilizes that space now.
And then the second issue is
And if
how
we-
big that area could be.
You
and
can
I-
limit the size.
And I'm trying to say, I'd like to limit the size to some percentage of the FAR footprint.
Okay, here's what I see the difference. We started here talking about roof decks.
Right.
And a roof deck is a roof deck.
It's
A
a balcony.
balcony is coming off of second floor portion of the house. It's an attachment to a two-story house.
You've hit on it, because the balcony needs to be defined as a maximum width rather than
Right.
a rooftop deck. I mean, right now, people will call it a balcony, it'll be 20 feet wide or 10 feet wide. So maybe we redefine the term balcony
But
and roof deck. You can't,
Yeah, when you're talking about roof deck, I'm thinking like a rooftop overlook.
yeah, but a balcony, from what you just said, yeah, traditionally balconies, especially condos, are just limited to 8 feet maximum.
That's different.
But then, by the
So-
way, you get into a situation where you're an engineer and you know that an 8-foot deck is really not going to give you any usable space.
Right.
So you build your house so that it's at least 14 feet, because now you can have a table out there and not get wet every time it rains.
Right.
And it also eliminates the sun on your furniture inside your house. And, there's a lot of practical reasons for having a balcony that's 14 feet, not 2 to 8. Sometimes you see these little things, they call them balconies, and it's really just an
yeah, yeah.
architectural relief,
Right.
which is not usable. So again, I don't know the answer, but yeah, it just looks, I don't know how to
Well, I think
eliminate
it's a
that.
definition issue here, that we should roof deck and balcony. But again, to your point, balconies can go from normally, as I said, 8 foot is your a sweet spot for a balcony.
Not
Um,
not usable.
Where do we go, Chrissy?
I just need direction as to if
Well,
you
if
want
you got any
to
direction,
eliminate.
you're ahead of me.
Can we ask Durrani, if, I mean, do you have any, can you direct us? I think you get a feel for where we're kind of stuck.
Well, again, it's a lot of technical language, and I also believe that the first discussion that we had about the open areas, if we continue on that path, it would also help the deck area. Because the truth is, the reason why we had a runaway train is because we allowed a lot of breezeways and a lot of covered areas that we didn't define previously. And once we used the 20%, that was taken to the extreme. If we start reining that in, it would also bring the overall size of the balcony. The 75% will also help with how big that will become. All right. Just to let you know that, we have a lot of applications that are considering flat roofs and a lot of other situations we're having in the town that are kind of depending on us moving this forward. The fact that, we still have unresolved issues, we probably could, make some proposals, send it forward is what I'm recommending. And, we could also change it during commission. It has to have at least 2 readings on it.
Well, I
that's-
got a motion on the table that
I think we
Let
could
me-
clean it up, and we could also revisit in the future. I mean, that's the thing, we'll probably never ever at the first, shot get something perfect.
No, I agree.
Put something in, let's see what it works. If we need to revise it later on, I think we should do that, but we shouldn't give away a very good ordinance trying to get something perfect.
Yeah, I
And
think
in the
we need,
interim, allowing a lot of other,
we
failures
need to
happen.
move ahead of it, anticipating that there will be amendments made. Once we grasp the impacts of all this, items, or all the items that we discussed. I think we need to move something forward.
So are we saying by what you just said that what Neil was saying with the 20% of a FAR calculation starts to limit that based on the fact that we're amending the FAR to be the living space and not all the extra?
That would help to
Yeah.
reduce and control the runaway train that we.
But amendments are available for, I think we need to have something.
No, but what happened is that because we use the covered roof areas to determine the maximum footprint of the usable deck, if we start controlling the overall covered areas,
that's correct.
Yeah,
That's
but
then we'll also,
proposal.
Yeah.
Yes, but if the flat roof area is uncovered, it would just be that 75% rule that it would really be regulated. More
This
than by
is-
the FAR.
This is
Both
going to
will
become
help.
more
Both will help.
complicated
Yeah.
because
both
as soon as one thing is the flat roof area. As soon as you say,
Flat roof.
I'm going to let you have, flat roof, I'm saying is we need to cover it as a percentage. As soon as it becomes flat roof area, which means you've granted access to it, now it becomes part of the 75% because it's usable. It wasn't usable before, it was outside of it. Now it's going, and that's going to impact other stuff. So it'd be,
By making it smaller. 75%, if that's now usable space, that 75%.
it's going to give
Closed
you
space
more
is
of
gonna get
a,
smaller.
it's going to be included in the second story. So it's going to give you more of a wedding cake
Right.
second story
Right.
because it's not it lost the vertical dimension of a wall or pillars and a roof over it, but it's still included. So
Look at Christie's.
So what I have so far is that the 14-foot maximum height from the finished floor elevation would be the maximum height that you could have a flat roof area for recreational use.
Mhm.
We would remove the FEMA language that I've included in the ordinance, but clarify the maximum height that's currently in the code that has the FEMA language, that's for a pitched roof system. Then we will, the percentage of the max of 20%, that definition would then be limited based on the FAR footprint and not all covered roof areas for the property.
Correct.
Then the remaining issues that I pointed out in the memo were to limit the access to be internal only. The parapet size, that it could go up to 3 feet around the usable space. No parapets on the pitched roof. Parapets can be used obviously on the flat roofs. It's still, the flat roof area would be limited to your building setbacks, so there couldn't be an overhang on setbacks. So ideally it's further back from the neighbors. And that's pretty much what we have, except for making some graphic changes, better illustrations in the proposed ordinance.
I'm willing to make a motion to pass it as outlined, as Christie outlined it, with the reduction of the flat roof area to 15%.
Okay,
Would that be with the, using the FAR footprint as the
To
definition?
be as you described.
Yeah.
Okay.
no, that's good. I'll second that.
I like the 20, but
Well, let's start, and I don't want to influence your vote. So your motion, I second. Can we have a roll call? Oh,
Do you want to take public comment first, please?
okay, I'm going to have to leave, but
I just, going back to last month when we were talking about flat roofs, with the introduction of a flat roof, to call it the recreational space flat roof area, I don't think it distinguishes enough, because I think you need to put something in there that makes it clear you can't build a party space on top of the second floor.
Agree.
And, you know, just 6273 North Ocean, it is in fact a 2,200 square foot deck, for lack of a better word, which is half again as big as this room, just for perspective. And then I had asked last month about exterior stair, and I noticed that you added language in emergency cases only. And Mr. Rivkin has heard from the town that he can have an exterior stair for emergency purposes. I mean, when would someone not be allowed to say, I need it for emergency purposes?
that's insane.
Good point.
Yeah,
You know,
we have to
there's
look at that.
internal,
because-
if there's internal access, why would you need an external stair?
No,
I
Thank you.
agree.
amend my motion to eliminate external stairway.
Okay, I still second it. That's a good point. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
That was painful, David. I'll leave on that note. Thank you, Christie, for
Thank you,
waiting through.
everyone.
Yeah, and everyone and everybody's participation.
we
Neil,
can bring it to
you're doing an amazing job.
Durrani for prodding us to do something.
Before you adjourn, I just have an announcement. I don't know if you all know, but Carla has given her notice.
No way.
She is going back to school
Hmm.
to study law.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Do we get to see the report cards?
Yeah, yeah.
Congrats.
So while it's, you know, bad thing for the town, it's a really good thing for Carla. And I want to support her in her future endeavors and thank her so much for her.
Yeah,
Thank you, Carla.
Yeah, I think the town benefited greatly from your input and your understanding of municipal workings.
Are you on retainer for training for, a long period of time?
Anyway,
I was
All right.
hoping Carl would be a future town manager someday, so different career path, future town attorney.
yeah.
So are we done?
Don't forget us, okay?
I'm waiving all comments.
What?
Did you gavel us shut?
Gone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You never
Yeah,
started,
you're
all right?
adjourned.
Hey, Mark,